Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange Hockey Night in on the National Broadcasting Network is what we call it because we call it National Hockey Night. No, we didn't get that from ESPN, but take it a little bit. Everybody takes from everybody, right? Very generous society. Happy to have my hockey crew here. George Eichhorn, welcome back to the big show.
Good to be here. Thank you, Scott, for having me.
First of two for you tonight. You can fire up after we're done. Mike Santos, our hockey analyst, and then some. This guy knows more about hockey than I know a lot of people. Glad to have Mr. Santos on. And once you let everybody know he's going to be doing, guys, going to be doing some wrestling stuff next week.
Yeah, that's right. NCAA wrestling championships.
Look at this guy.
One of my other loves.
Who's your team? Who's your school?
Well, my school actually doesn't have a wrestling program anymore. I went to Boston College, but as far as who do I like? I mean, I don't think you can like anybody but Penn State this weekend. They're just loaded. I mean, there's wrestlers I like from some different schools. The Hamity kid who transferred to Oklahoma State this year. Of course, I'm watching them because of David Taylor going in there as a coach, replacing the legend John Smith. So that's a fun group. I just got through watching the Big Ten, the Big 12, and the ACC championships all weekend. So I just watched a lot of wrestling last weekend.
That's amazing. I never wrestled. Well, I started out, but there were like 8 of us who were heavyweights, so I knew I'd never see the mat. But always been a huge fan. A kid from my high school was a 2-time state champion, Matt McCutcheon, and he wrestled at Penn State for Cal.
Yeah,
and the man talking about wrestling, by the way, is the barber Mark Maradei. So just so you know.
Welcome, Barber.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Barber. Have a busy show lined up. First couple topics are actually related to the Florida Panthers. My goodness, I wonder why. They seem to be in the news a lot lately. Michael will have his segment about his hockey operations update. And we'll talk about Stephen A. Smith on this show. How about that? And we have another Four Nations topic along with Jack. Let's get it going. We have a hard out at 9 o'clock. I want to make sure we get to everything so everybody can talk about it. Aaron Ekblad, are his days numbered with the Florida Panthers? Well, first of all, the guy is 29 years of age. He was suspended for 20 games for violating the terms of the league's performance-enhancing substance program. He has 3 goals and 33 points in 56 games this season. This is 11th with the Panthers. He's set to become a free agent. And he's the first NHL player since Nate Schmidt on September 2018 to receive this suspension. Mike, what are your thoughts about Aaron Ekblad? Number one, are his days numbers? And two, this is not a good look for this guy.
Well, I think it's obvious his days are numbered. I also believe that this type of thing doesn't happen with an NHL player without his club knowing what's going on. So I believe the Panthers knew about this. I think the injuries that he's had, particularly in the last few years, have caught up to him. And as you mentioned, he's going to be a free agent. So I don't believe there's any doubt that that is another reason why they went out and acquired Seth Jones. I think his days are numbered with the Panthers, and frankly, his days in the league may be numbered. And I have to believe that's one reason why he was using whatever substance he was to try to recover and maybe even save his career.
Wow. What are your thoughts? Hi, Eddie Fraser. How you doing, pal? So, Mark, what do you think?
I was going to say I agree with Mike. What Mike said about trying to save his career, because he's been around for a long time, and quite frankly, the wear and tear of last season, playing to the bitter end, and getting 2/3 of the way through this season, almost 3/4 of the way through this season. Actually, I think they are 3/4 of the way through. I'm sure he's pretty well beat up, and whether he's truly injured or just nicked up, trying to be able to make it through the rest of the year. I mean, those guys do that. And what always cracks me up is they'll be like, I didn't realize I used something that was banned. Like, yes, you did. You know what you're not allowed to do. You've asked around. They tell you, it's too bad, though, because he's had a pretty solid career as a defenseman in the league. He really has. He's been a good backbone for Florida through thick and thin. So, I mean, I agree. I think he's at the end. He might hang around another year or so just to be a depth defenseman for somebody, but I don't think it'll be with Florida.
What do you think, George?
You're right. You're right on the money in that players, particularly players of his stature, his experience, and what he's meant to the Panthers since his rookie year, 11 years ago, I guess it is now, maybe 12.
I think it's 12.
They don't make a move when injured without the club knowing what's going on. And so, of course, there's always a risk that this type of thing gets out there. But I think the risk was probably worth whatever reward he could get, both for him and for the Panthers, him to save his career, and for the Panthers, hopefully to maybe find a way to keep him in the fold and keep him healthy. And maybe it will work, maybe it won't work, but I believe that somehow the Panthers knew this was coming down the pike before the trade deadline, and that was another reason why they went out and got Jones, who was actually a year older than Ekblad, but has a lot less wear and tear on his body, primarily because of one of the things you mentioned, Barbara, which is he hasn't played in the playoffs.
No.
And this is a kid, Ekblad, now, who not only did he play till the end last year, but he played at the end of the year before.
That's right. I forgot about that.
2 years in a row playing basically into July doesn't give you a lot of time to recover and heal up your injuries in the world of the NHL. And I think this was sort of a last-ditch effort to try to get himself back, maybe save his career, and certainly, at least try to get into that free agency pool where he can get one more contract, hopefully for him of a sizable amount, but it doesn't look good.
Well, I'll say it's another great move by Bill Zito to at least get that challenge. What are your thoughts, George?
Well, Ekblad is the first NHL player to be suspended, it says, for PED use since Nate Schmidt 7 years ago in 2018. And in fairness to Ekblad, I'm going to just read quickly his one part of his statement. As the NHL announced, I've been suspended for violating the NHL/NHLPA Performance Enhancing Substances Program. The news that I had failed a random drug test was a shock. Ultimately, I made a mistake by taking something to help me recover from recent injuries without first checking with proper medical and team personnel. There you go right there. How you can just take something and not check in with the guys that are there to watch over your health is beyond me. I mean, it's like Pandora's box. You do something like that and you're really asking for trouble. And sure enough, he got caught. I agree with what you said, Mike. I mean, he's had a great career. He has had, a strong influence defensively on the Panthers and what they've been able to accomplish the last several years. So I really think that it's a shame for him, but I agree. I do not see him coming back next season. For sure with the Panthers, and maybe, like you said, the whole league.
Well, let's face the reality. He's not getting in the Hall of Fame, so you might as well make as much money as you can to save your career.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
I also think it's, in his statement when he says he sort of took it on his own, I don't believe that for a second.
Okay.
I mean, he was suspended for 20 games. Having worked for NHL teams, you don't let a player of that stature, particularly when he's injured and he's coming up to a juncture like he is of being an unrestricted free agent, just go off and start taking things on his own. On the flip side, what would be the penalty to the Florida Panthers if they were involved in prescribing or giving him this substance? And so I think that in that statement, there's a little bit there to protect the Panthers.
Yeah.
So that they don't get penalized as well as Ekblad. And look, it's all speculation, but chances are there was a frank, honest discussion between the Panthers, their training staff, their medical staff, and Ekblad before all this went down. Mm-hmm. And we're going to try to help you save your career. Maybe you become a player for us still in future years. Maybe you can't, but you'll at least be able to continue to play in the league. But if it doesn't work, we're telling you that it wasn't our choice. It was your choice. So.
That was kind of a stand-up thing of him to kind of cover up for the Panthers, though. To be quite honest with you, like you said, I'm sure they knew. I'm sure they knew exactly what he was doing, and that was kind of a stand-up thing in my eyes. Mike, you blew me away when you told me that him and Seth Jones came in the league at the same time. I guess I don't look at Seth Jones as an older player just because he's never been around the playoffs or anything like that much. So,
yeah, what do you want to do with Chicago Blackhawks? Come on, Mark, seriously? Really?
Well, Jones was a 2013 pick, and Ekblad was a 2014 pick. And I know that because I was part of the group and we passed on Jones for Barkov.
Oh, did you?
In that draft. And the following year, when I was still with the club, the reason why Ekblad was picked was because we got the center in Barkov the year before, and now here we had another franchise type right-handed big defenseman. So it worked out perfectly.
Yeah.
In getting Barkov and then getting Ekblad. I'll say we, because I was there at the time, taken Jones that first year, I don't know what the future of the team would have been, because there would have been no need to take an Ekblad the following year, and we wouldn't have had Barkov.
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys a question. Do you guys remember that show, Truth or Consequences?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bob Barker hosted it before he went to The Price is Right. Guess what? Truth or Consequences all over again, Eric. Ekblad. Had to throw that out there. And not only that, okay, we'll talk about Alexander Barkov for a moment. It's not a topic tonight. Had the opportunity to go to the FAU game against East Carolina. He happened to be sitting courtside. And Candy Ebling was able to get a picture of him there wearing his Florida Atlantic University Owls shirt. It's pretty cool stuff. I was sitting all the way in the back by the scoreboard, so I didn't see him, but Candy doesn't miss a beat when it comes to taking those pictures. Back to the chat room. I know Eddie Prather's in there. I don't understand why Florida traded Marchand, who's on his last leg. We'll get to that in a moment. Joshua Dorr, what's going on? South Florida Tribune, you are, because it's the show you want to be on. Hockey show, Eddie, because they gave up nothing. He's a veteran and winning cup presidents on the team. The man can still play, especially come playoff time. We're going to get to that. Great transition for these guys, which obviously is the Brad Marchand topic. He's a sixth player in 20 years to be traded in season from a club where he's played. Now, with the acquisition of former Boston Bruins captain Brad Marchand, who was actually leading, will the Florida Panthers be enough to get to their second Stanley Cup? And here's the thing. Marchand missed a 3-2 loss in Boston last night, and he's going to be out at least 2 weeks because of an injury. So here's a little bit of information on him, and then I'll turn it over to you guys. He's got the fourth most playoff goals behind active players. Alexander Ovechkin's got 72, Sidney Crosby 71, Evgeny Malkin 67, and he's got 13 game-winning goals in the Stanley Cup playoffs behind, and he's tied with Malkin and Andre Palat. Lot to digest there. So, George, I'll start off with you. What are your thoughts about Marchand? We'll keep it down to one question. Is he going to be the guy that could lead the Florida Panthers to their second straight title, albeit he's hurt at the moment, but let's say they still have a little bit of time. George?
Well, yeah. And it's quite emotional for him, too, even though he couldn't play since the trade and returning to Boston for the first time. And that was rather quickly. Obviously, that happened a couple nights ago. But I think, if he can still play and his injury is healed, yes, he can definitely help that team out. He's a proven NHL stud, I call him. I mean, he's had up and down years like everybody, but he definitely can still skate with the best of them and still maintain that high level of intensity, as we all know is needed in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I'm going to keep my remarks brief, but four-time All-Star, Bruins career leader in playoff shorthanded overtime goals. Yes, he can help Florida win it again.
How about you, Mark?
I think he's going to be irreplaceable for Boston because he brought some intangibles that really made that team click. And I think Florida got I think Florida got a bargain when they got him, to be honest with you. He's going to be that gritty guy to take some of the pressure waves from some of the other gritty guys in the playoffs once they get rolling. I mean, as a Penguin fan, you hate Marchand, but I mean, you got to respect what he does on the ice. He goes hard. He gets in people's heads. He reminds me a lot of like a Darius Kasparaitis from that perspective, where he can throw you off on your game just by doing what he does. But he has some skill at the end of the day. And I like what Florida did acquiring him. I mean, I think that was a great pickup for them.
What do you think, Mike?
Well, first on the Boston side of things, I mean, from what I understand, they offered him a contract worth $6 million a year, and he turned it down. And obviously, not only did he turn it down, but there wasn't they weren't close enough to try to negotiate something to keep him in Boston. Maybe he overplayed his hand. Let's see. I mean, he's in his 30s now. He's a lot of mileage on that guy. He's another guy that, remember, has played deep into the playoffs pretty much every year of his 14 or 15-year career. He plays hard, as you guys mentioned. He's not a guy that plays on the outside, and he's not a big guy. So it'll be interesting to see if that money is there for him in the marketplace. I mean, he's got the same agent or the same agency, Newport Sports, that represents guys like Steven Stamkos, for instance, who the Predators, I think, would admit now they overpaid for last summer as a mid-30, in his mid-30s and as a free agent. So I don't blame Boston for moving on. I mean, they've got to turn that ship around. They've been known in the past to hang on to guys too long, guys like Bergeron, for instance. At some point, you got to pull the plug and you got to rebuild. And I don't think they could afford to take a chance on Marchand at this point in his career for that much. Now, I'll also give Boston credit because apparently they went to Marchand and the agent and said, "Okay, we're not going to get a deal done with you. Where would you like to go?" Marchand said that he would like to go to Florida, and kudos to Florida for getting a guy that in some capacity may fill in and may have to fill in for Tkachuk. I mean, he brings that same nasty sandpaper type of game that you need in the playoffs. Now he's injured with a reported concussion, but his prognosis is they'll be back a lot sooner than Tkachuk will be. And so they need that element. He's not a center like Tkachuk, but he's still probably the best thing they could have found, before the trade deadline to bring the element that they need down the playoffs. And there's very little, they gave up some stuff, including a draft pick that could become a first round pick if Florida goes on into the playoffs and Marchand plays. But that pick will be a relatively low pick in the first round. So it's not a huge gamble for them. If not, it'll become a second round pick. If he doesn't work out, they don't have to re-sign him either.
Right.
Going to the market, and we'll see what his market is. It wouldn't surprise me if Marchand went into the marketplace, particularly if Florida doesn't make a long run in the playoffs, or if he's not a big part of it. It wouldn't surprise me if he goes back in the marketplace, takes a haircut, maybe even returns to Boston for less than what they offered him before. If he has some success with Florida, then I think there's a chance that he'll re-sign here in Florida, but it'll be, again, less for that $6 million that he was offered in Boston.
Yeah, I'll make my comment short and sweet because, Mike, I knew that great minds think alike, and you definitely were able to say what was on my mind. More power to you. But first of all, he is a rental as it stands at the moment. And right now he won't be back for a couple of weeks. I give the Panthers credit for making the move to want to win now. You have to show your fan base that you're willing to win now. And this is the guy who was a popular choice to come here to Florida. Whether or not they get him re-signed, I do predict he'll go back to Boston. But you need to find out what your market really is. And once you find out what your market really is, and you find out, all right, well, maybe it wasn't as bad as it could have been. Obviously, Florida has no state income tax, so you're saving a little bit of money here. But Boston, you're going to get your number retired at some point down the road. And you already had, I believe he had a Stanley Cup or so anyways, up in Boston. So now can he win another one with another club? It remains to be seen. But more power to both sides. And the carrot is the draft choice. We don't know how they're going to turn out. But Boston, some teams don't understand that you have to let guys go before you want to in an effort to try to save on the economics and build a little bit and give other players an opportunity. I don't think Boston is a serious playoff threat. And if they do, they're going to get in on the back end anyway, not the front end. So I think it's a win-win for both sides. It shows the Panthers fan base are willing to try, give it a shot, like you say, with Matthew Tkachuk. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. This will not be the last time that we definitely talk about it for sure. All right, this is a part of the show where Mike Santos has an opportunity to give us an update about what's going on over at Hockey Operations. Go ahead, Mike. The floor is yours.
We're still moving ahead with a number of our projects. Team 33, of course, which is our hockey operations management software. We're hoping to have an announcement this coming summer that we've able to launch the product to the marketplace for consumers. So if and when that happens, I think there'll be a nice product out there, especially for hockey fans that have favorite teams they want to manage, or maybe a fantasy team they want to manage. It'll be a lot of fun to use. So we've also we're moving ahead with our television production company, Oglethorpe Entertainment, and we're in production now for episodes of Sports Jobs. And one of the other things, I don't know if we've mentioned too, but we actually have a little T-shirt company, which is a Boston-based company called Boston Tea Company, which we sell a lot of nostalgic T-shirts from back in the day, popular places in and around Boston. So that's where we're at.
All right, we're going to go to a station break. Candy, go ahead. We'll get to some of the comments in the chat room. Candy gets back. And when Candy goes ahead and starts, she's going to start with Ralph Williams, George, Eddie, and Ralph. So go ahead to the station break. You got 5 to go off. Candy, go ahead, please.
Station break. Here we go. South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by your host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth, and the forward is written by George Eichhorn. Awesome job, you gentlemen. This book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple Books. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcast. You can also find the book. The link is on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where there's a link to our merchandise store, as well as a plethora of great content, including like an article from Scott, who was just at the FAU men's basketball game this past weekend. And there's some other videos up on our YouTube channel from there. And I'm going to brag a couple of good pictures too that I took. Okay, I said it. Enjoy, go out there and enjoy it. If you want to be a guest on a show, you can always email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. And if you want to sponsor a show or advertise, call Scott 954-304-4941. Back to the show, Scott.
All right, Candy, let's start off with Ralph Williams first. Crosby and Malkin, you know it. All right, Ralph. I know it, you know it, so does everybody else. I'm going to just read them down as we move through the topics. Penguins need gritty players like the Panthers. That's a ticket to success. George Boris says there's no limit to how long a top athlete can produce. Look at LeBron and Ronaldo. That's true. LeBron James is a freakish athlete. Marchand production has been going on the last couple of years. That's probably why the Bruins wanted to let him test his value. The Panthers gambled. We'll see how it all plays out. Interesting that Fenway owns the Bruins. Is it? They own the Bruins? I thought they owned the Red Sox.
Fenway Sports Group owns the Pittsburgh Penguins. They own the Boston Red Sox, but they don't own the Bruins.
Right, I didn't think so either. Okay. Anyways, Ralph, got it out there. A little clarification. One guy that we talked about on this show a few weeks ago, and he's definitely worth mentioning tonight. Stephen A. Smith, his AAV, his contract is worth $20 million in U.S. Austin Matthews is the highest paid NHL guy with $13.25 U.S. dollars for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Can you believe that? What about Stephen A. Smith earning more than Austin Matthews? You ever watch Stephen A. Smith at all, Mike?
Oh, of course. I think Stephen A. Smith makes more than Austin Matthews because he makes more money for ESPN than Austin Matthews makes for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think it's that simple. I mean, especially in today's NHL system under the collective bargaining agreement, the players have a 50-50 split of revenue, and that's a large part of how the salary cap is figured out each year.
Right.
So if players start creating more revenue to share, then they'll get paid more. Stephen A. Smith, love him or hate him, brings in a lot of money, I think, for ESPN.
All I know is I watch this guy every day from 10 to 12, and I do learn a lot from him. I had an opportunity to see him over the Super Bowl. We took a nice picture together. That will be in Lessons from the Microphone Part 2. It was kind of neat. Now, I don't know about you, Mike, but any journalist likes to look at other journalists out there, just kind of shadow, get some ideas, see if you can take some of their good things and bring it on himself. And Stephen A. Smith, you're going to make that much more money. Can you imagine how many Twitter followers this guy has and all the other business interests? It just blows me mind. But Austin Matthews is good for hockey, and to get $13 million in the NHL is not bad work if you can get it. And hey, the first takes credit when Four Nations was going on, and what do we have? PK Subban. He was getting Stephen A. Smith a little bit involved in this game that we call on Frozen Pond. All right, Maradei, what do you think about Stephen A. Smith and Austin Matthews?
ESPN has no salary cap, so whatever they felt his value was, that's what they paid him. Bottom line. NHL has a salary cap. They got to work within the parameters. They Toronto deemed Austin Matthews to be their top dog. They paid him like it. That salary cap in the NHL over the next 3 years is gonna increase quite a bit, and that $13 million that Matthews is making, somebody's going to be making a lot more than that at some point real soon. But yeah, I mean, I think Stephen A. Smith is loud, brash, and fun to watch. I'll say that much. I like this confrontation. I like this confrontation with LeBron. What was it last week? LeBron being a dad, Stephen A. Smith saying, "Look, I'm going to call it the way I see it, but I do think he deserves to be paid. I don't know 20 million, but he deserves to be paid."
He's grown on me. All right, George.
Well, we know that hockey lags behind some of the other sports for sure as far as salaries go. So that doesn't come as a total shock to me. The 13.25, I believe you said, for Austin. Stephen A. Smith, yeah, they're keeping him as best they can. Happy they want to. Unfortunately, ESPN has shown the door to so many other talented men and women that have been on and off the air. But when you got a guy like that, that's like your Walter Cronkite, your Tom Brokaw, your Peter Jennings. I mean, you got to pay him top dollar. And Stephen A. Smith deserves it. Like you said, Scott, I mean, that's intriguing talk and discussion, and he works hard in his profession. So you might not like his style or his personality sometimes, but damn, he's a good journalist.
Well, let's go to Eddie Fraser's comment. Can't avoid it. I mean, I like Eddie Fraser. You can't watch Stephen A. Smith without wanting to shoot my TV. That's how he really feels, and I'm sure you're probably not alone with that, although I'm not going to be one of them. I'm learning too much about him, but I totally get it, Eddie. I put it out there. I didn't even mind speaking it because it is what it is. Okay, him and Nick Wright. Yeah, I don't know much about Nick Wright. Don't watch him much. Stephen is right about Pronti. Oh, there's no question about that. Don't compare Smith to those legit legends. Okay, fair enough. Good enough. Okay. But I'll tell you another inspiring story that did come out of the Four Nations face-off. And it was actually pertaining to two Montreal Canadiens teammates who got home ice in Montreal. Those are Joel Armia and Patrick Lane. What are your thoughts about that? That you have two guys that are teammates playing over in Montreal. Mike, that is quite inspiring, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's great. And it was interesting that both of them saw the bench pretty quickly in the Four Nations as well. Yeah, I mean, Patrick Lane, if people don't realize that he and his wife have done quite a bit to help not only athletes, but people who have some issues, head issues. And so to be commended. But yeah, great friendship, both playing in Montreal now. Both on the Finnish team at the at the Four Nations. I have nothing but good thoughts when I see all that.
Good, inspiring story. And every now and then I'm going to pick on a topic for the Four Nations because there's so many storylines we couldn't get to before. If I see an opportunity to bring it up, I'm going to do it. This one just happened to pop across my desk to do that. Mark, so what are your thoughts about these two guys?
I've always been a Patrick Laney fan. I've always thought he was a pretty terrific hockey player. Getting to play in the Four Nations as well as play in the regular season with one of your Goombas, as I like to call them, is probably a lifelong memory. That's something you always want to do. Somebody that you are familiar with, one of your countrymen, you play both places with them. It leaves a lasting memory and it builds a bond like no other. Montreal is got to get this all figured out, but I think those guys are a couple of guys that can help them down the road to put them back on the map. And that's my thoughts.
George?
Well, Lane's been hurt. I mean, he's been in 35 games this year, correct? But yeah, he's still a good player. And certainly it is kind of cool when you can do that together. It really is. And Montreal has had a much better year. I mean, they're 31, 27-7, but they are in the fight like the Red Wings and several other teams for that final playoff spot. So I think that these guys, any guy really, that went to that Four Nations and participated brings back great memories. Maybe they didn't win, but got a chance to play on the world stage. And certainly these two fellows did as well in Montreal.
Great story. Glad we could talk about it. One last up for the night. Jack Hughes will not return this season after undergoing shoulder surgery. He'll be on long-term injured reserve. Mike, tough break for the Devils.
Yeah, and another casualty of the Four Nations that, again, was a terrific event for 10 days. It was certainly better than an all-star game, but now we're seeing some of the issues that are rearing their ugly heads as we go on. The Panthers have a big one themselves, and now the Devils have one. And this is the stuff that will be discussed when they go forward with Four Nations. It's also, right or wrong, the reason why players in all sports tell you that they don't really want to bust their behind in an all-star game because this can happen. And we saw it happen. And I don't think this is the last one that's going to come out of that Four Nations.
Roy Lee Quack, glad to have you on. Dougie Hamilton out for the rest of the season in the playoffs. Just to know a little bit about Roy Lee Quack. He actually covers the LA Kings and the Anaheim Ducks. So we're going to have him on once in a while on the show as well. Thanks for chiming in, Roy Lee Quack. We appreciate it. So it's good anytime you can find people, Mike, on the West Coast that'll want to come on every now and then, fill in, depending on who's ever on. I'll even bring them on with all of us. There's four of us, and I always use a fifth one every once in a while. Roy Lee Quack would come in, but I'm glad he's able to chime in the chat room and make himself familiar with the audience for sure. But yeah, Mike, with all due respect, Jack Hughes is another byproduct of the Four Nations, and it's just totally unfortunate. But I will say this, the NHL gave it their all during this competition, and when you look at the other All-Star games in their respective formats, they're still bad, and the numbers certainly back the NHL. And this is a Four Nations tournament was really a coming out party, as far as I'm concerned, with the NHL putting itself on the map to be able to showcase a lot of its stars. Mike, you bring up tons of great points as you do every time we have you on. Anyways, I'm just reinforcing what you already said. Good stuff. Really? Seriously? Really? Hey, by the way, that cap will be coming out in a few weeks. You'll see it, so I don't have to talk about it and save that thing called the vocal cords, although who knows if they're savable at this particular point. All right, Mark, talk about Jack the Man Hughes.
Second shoulder surgery, right? You don't want that to be a reoccurring thing. He's a great young talent. All the Hughes boys can play hockey. Let's put it that way. And New Jersey's putting together something special over there as well. They've got some great young talent there. That's definitely going to hurt them without a question. But I'm more concerned with that kid. Like I said, second surgery like that. Long run, I hope it's not a nagging thing that keeps coming back to him.
George?
Yeah, that's a terrible blow for the Devils, of course. I mean, he's 23 years old. He's got 70 points, I think this year is close to it. It is a tough pill to swallow anytime you have an injury, but especially when it occurs in an event like that. I really think that Jack is going to bounce back. I mean, obviously he's on long-term injury reserve right now, but he's such a good player. He's really works hard, and he really has a lot of talent, and can really muck it up when he has to, and do the things he has to do to win. Unfortunately for the Devils, they're left in a tough position, losing that top gun of theirs. But anyways, yeah, it's unfortunate, Scott, but he'll be back. I know he'll be back stronger than ever, hopefully in the summertime or training camp time next fall.
One last thing I want to mention here, Alex Ovechkin's magic number to break William Gretzky is 9. Mike, when do you think he's going to break this record? This guy's on a roll.
Maybe this weekend if he keeps going the way he's going.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think it's almost certain he'll do it by the end of the season. I mean, he's obviously on a mission to do it as well. He's not out there just playing his game and letting the goals come as they come. I mean, he's never been that type of a player. I mean, he loves to score, and he seeks out the opportunity to score, and that's what he does. So I don't think there's any doubt that he'll do it before the end of the season, and that means within the next 3 weeks or so.
Okay, when you think Gordie Howe was untouchable, Wayne Gretzky's untouchable, and now Alex Ovechkin is on the verge of being number one. And think about the one guy that did benefit from not playing that Four Nations was him, because Russia was in, and all he did was simply rest. Boy, well, that's a good way to segue over to Maradei, right? When we're talking about Ovechkin.
Yeah, I'm excited for him to break that record. I really am. He doesn't do much on the ice, but he sits in that circle, waits for that feed, and rips that wrister. Man, can he get it done still. I mean, he's a strong guy. I find it hard to believe, though. He said he's going to play out his contract 25, 26. I almost think that he might second guess himself if he breaks this record this year as to whether he'll come back next year. But if he does, that's fine. Because he, like I said, he really doesn't do much on the ice but score right now. But I'm excited for him. Like, that is a huge accomplishment. Yeah. I always looked at him as like a Brett Hall type of guy, but he's an excelled Brett Hall at this point.
Is he a LeBron type of guy?
No. You know what, Mike? I'm going to say this. I think Ovechkin still could lay the hammer if he really wanted to. He's not going to go down. Look how quick he came back from his leg injury. LeBron, did you know that LeBron hasn't played in the NBA for 4 straight years in the month of March?
No.
4 straight years. Wow. Which blows me away. You would never see an NHL guy do something like that.
Yeah. No, I agree with you completely when it comes to that. But I only say that because you've got a couple of guys in their 40s. They're basically from the same generation. Their careers have almost mirrored each other as far as the time that they've played in the league, and they both started as 18, 19-year-olds.
Right.
And they're both gonna maybe break scoring plateaus in the same season, 20 plus years into their career. It's a lot different game in basketball as it is in hockey today. There weren't too many guys playing 22 years.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So
I do think hockey will feel the ill effects of when he leaves, when Crosby leaves. I feel like hockey will feel the ill effects. I don't see McDavid. I don't see those guys taking on that role like those guys did, making people tune in to watch them play the game.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting subject, because what if McDavid was drafted and was playing in the United States?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Right?
That really is. He's hiding in Edmonton, Mike. You really think about it, right? He's hiding in Edmonton. If he's in an American market, do you say that, Mark? I think Mike's really on with that comment. Mike, you really got a bullseye there.
What if Ovi and Crosby ended up being picked by Ottawa or Vancouver or Edmonton?
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying that they wouldn't have had great careers. Still, they certainly would have. Maybe those teams, they would have led those teams to cups, but would they have the impact on, the U.S. hockey audience that those guys have had over these years because they've played in places like Washington and Pittsburgh. Not only that, but they played in the same division and had lots of heated head-to-head games, including playoff series, which I think really did a lot of good for hockey. Look at the difference between, Gretzky in LA versus Gretzky in Edmonton, and arguably Gretzky had more success in Edmonton than he did in LA, but he did more for the game in LA than he did in Edmonton.
Excellent points. If I could hand out exclamation points on that, Mike, you probably had about a handful of them, because that's true. What he did to grow hockey on the West Coast led, obviously, Vegas getting a team, the Coyotes for a period of time, everything out in Dallas. He opened up doors out on that. And, of course, now we can even say the Kraken, a result of what Gretzky did out in L.A. And, of course, let's not forget the San Jose market as well. He definitely opened up the West Coast market for sure. And, but I want to say one thing, Mark, to you when you were saying about Ovechkin. I do think that he does play out one more year, his NHL contract, and I could see him playing in his country the final year. I really have a gut feeling that's going to happen. I know they've talked about it, but we could probably devote a topic to that. But it's funny how you mentioned the contract, and I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in there as well. Everybody's on point with what they're saying. It's just sometimes, Mike, you know how they say you have to roll with a gut feeling and your instincts when you make certain comments, and those are some of the things that I have. And obviously, you've been in the game, Mike, way longer than I have on the inside as well as what you're doing. So we all try to bring something unique to the table. But you're right, Mike. Gretzky did more for the game of hockey playing in L.A. I mean, Marcel Dion was hidden out there, but it wasn't with the Red Wings, but yet he was a heck of a player out in L.A., right? It wasn't until Gretzky got out there that L.A. was even known as anything other than palm trees and Hollywood, the Hollywood stars. Gretzky turned it around.
But one thing that Mark said that you can't overlook, and that is that Ovechkin and Crosby, they played the game the right way. They didn't play on the outside. Ovechkin, maybe not as much now as when he was younger. Probably the same thing. But those guys were looking for contact. They were not shying away from it. They played the game the right way.
All his career. Mike, let me ask you this, since we're on the roll with this.
I got to talk still. Don't forget me.
I won't. But I got to ask Mike this. Do you think that if Connor McDavid actually had a nemesis, kind of like Crosby and Ovechkin were, do you think if he had a nemesis, it would do something more for his career, even though he's in Canada?
I think it might help, but again, I mean, look at that great series last year. And if he had a nemesis, who would be a better nemesis than Tkachuk? I mean, we played against him, Calgary and Edmonton, which is one of the biggest rivalries in the sport. And then last year they meet in the finals, right?
Yeah.
I think it's just the exposure of him to the U.S. audience, which is really, holding it back more than anything else. I think. I think he's right up there, with all of the greats when it comes to talent and skill. But to this point in his career, he just hasn't had that exposure. And you're right too. I mean, these guys just don't come along. I was talking to an NHL general manager this morning who's in the process of rebuilding, and he was asking me my thoughts on basically how do you do it? We just talked about Marchand. The Bruins finally cut ties with him. They got to rebuild. Do you count on doing it through the draft? Well, you can't really necessarily do that because, number one, in the world of hockey, you're drafting 18-year-old players. You're looking at them when they're 16, 15, 16, 17 years old. You're trying to gauge what they're going to be like when they're 24 and 25 years old. I mean, that's the first part of the inexact science. The second part is you just have to get lucky and have that pick when that guy's there. I mean, everybody thought Connor Bedard was going to be the next NHL superstar savior. I'm not so sure he's going to be that in Chicago. I think San Jose, who actually lost the draft lottery to Chicago, ended up with a better situation now with Celebrini.
Yeah, he's tough.
So yeah, it's just the dynamics of building hockey clubs and the sport and the way the draft works. You can't count on building your team through the draft when you're looking at kids and you're trying to, hopefully you draft, you're bad and you draft early when that superstar happens to come out every 20 or 25 years.
Mike, do me a favor, give Kyle Dubas a call and share those thoughts with them, please.
All right, well, you know what? I'll give George Eichhorn an opportunity to talk about Alex Ovechkin. Go ahead, George. He's been patiently waiting.
Sorry, George.
That's okay. No big deal. Hey, listen, I don't interrupt anything where you have good dialogue going. But I gotta give GE his shot there. Kyle Dubas. All right, go ahead, George.
It's going to be a close call. Okay, you look at Ovechkin and what he's doing now. Okay, guys, he's got no goals, then he's got one, then he's got no, and then he's got one, then he's got no. He is on an every other game goal pace. It's going to be very close to get to Gretzky's mark. 8 to tie, 9 to exceed. He has to come up with some multi-goal games, in my opinion, to be able to do it. But he has helped that team out so much. Now, this is a team that fought like hell to defeat my Red Wings last year on the final day of the year. And look at what they did, okay? I hope Stevie Y is looking at this. 43 wins for Washington and 14 losses and 8 overtime losses. It's just a tremendous, oh my God. I mean, they have really put things together. And of course, it all counts more, as we know, in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But Alex's role and what he does to that team is just tremendous. All I'm saying is his pace is not as big as it used to be. I think he's going to need a couple multi-goal games to break the record.
All right, as we get ready to wrap up the Sports Exchange here, I know Mike has a hard out at 9, so George, why don't you let everybody know how they get a hold of you? I'll fire up. It's at the top of the hour. Go ahead, George. Make it quick. We have a book. Candy will go ahead and give us a station break after everybody's done. Go ahead, George.
All right. You can find my writings at the South Florida Tribune under the contributors section. And at the end of my column, there's always a link to my book, which is called Detroit Sport Broadcasters on the Air, which came out several years ago. You could follow me on 108 Stitches, follow me on Yahoo at G. Eichhorn. You could follow me on LinkedIn. And anyways, good to be part of the show again.
All right, Mark, go ahead.
Go to originalsportspodcast.com, click on our link tree, and you can join all our social medias as well as YouTube. We have our live show on Tuesday nights for the Original Sports Podcast. And on Thursdays, we are doing a Pittsburgh Steelers only show going through the season called Terrible Talk. Come and watch us. Come and chime in.
Thursday Sports Exchange is presented by Hockey Operations LLC. Mike Santos, let everybody know how they get a hold of you. Candy will wrap it up with a station break. Go ahead, Mike.
You can get a hold of me at msantos with an S at hockeyoperations with an S.org. I'll respond to any of your questions, especially if they're hockey related. And if I don't, as my good friend Frank Lodato once said, it's because I'm dead.
Frank Lodato, what a great guy. Rest in peace. And if it weren't for Frank Lodato, Mike, I wouldn't have you as my good friend for the last 10 years. And now because of Frank, you're on the show with us. Great stuff. Candy, station break real quick and give everybody a preview of what's going on. Fire up top of the hour. We'll be here next Thursday night with another edition of Sports Exchange. Well, Mike is out there doing his thing with wrestling, but the only thing Mike has to promise is you better give us some good stories when you get back in 2 weeks. Fair enough, my friend?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm real excited.
Yeah, I am. I'm excited for you. And just so you know, we're going to the NCAA Women's Final Four in a few weeks, but I'll hear Mike's stories before he'll hear mine. Candy, take it away.
South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by our host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth, and the foreword is written by none other than George Eichhorn. Talks about their 40-plus years in the business and how it has changed over the years. You get your copy today, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple Books. There's also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where there's a link to our merchandise store as well as a plethora of great content. Go check it out. If you want to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcast. If you see the red subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner, that means you haven't subscribed to the South Florida Tribune's YouTube channel. And honestly, I don't know why you haven't, but please do so as soon as possible. And tell all your friends and family that you know would enjoy all of our great programming. Monday nights, we talk baseball. Tuesday nights, we talk football. Wednesday nights, you just never know. Thursday nights, we talk NHL and hockey in general. And then on Fire Up, you never know what we're talking about. But tonight, there's been a flurry of all kinds of NFL news. So we're going to talk some NFL news. We might even talk about the Tampa Bay Rays stadium problem. Where are they going to keep playing? Tune into the show to find out. If you want to advertise on a show or sponsor a show, call Scott 954-304-4941. And if you want to be a guest on a show, email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Back to you,
All right,
Scott.
I want to end the show on a really positive note. Just came across my wire a little bit earlier. How about hats off to the Portland Trailblazers for bringing Natalie Gilbert Vito back to do the national anthem. Maurice Cheeks was there. Unfortunately, a few years ago, she stumbled. Maurice Cheeks was there to help her out, but she came back married looking really good, and they had to give her an opportunity to do it again, and she was sparkling and unbelievable. I saw that just before we came on air tonight. Natalie, more power to you. I don't think if there's ever a feel-good story at a time when all of the sports people need it, Natalie Gilbert Vito singing the national anthem in Portland is a great story, and Maurice Cheeks and the New York Knicks are there to witness it. So I want to thank our crew tonight, George Eichhorn, Mike Santos, and the Barber, Mark Maradei, for being on. On behalf of Mike Santos, the Barber, and George Eichhorn, my name is Scott Morgan, Route the Motor City Manmouth. Thank you for joining us. Candy's our producer. We'll see Mike in 2 weeks. We'll see everybody next Thursday night on the Sports Exchange. Good night, everybody. Have a great week. See you next week. Peace.
Awesome.